He cried at our 30th anniversary dinner because I'd trained him to. The Merlot soaked through the linen, right over a photo from 1989, back when he still called me his sunshine. My book club froze mid-bite. Pastor John clutched his rosary. And me, I buttered a roll, calm, steady, like I hadn't just broken a man in front of his grandchildren. We were high school sweethearts. He used to cry during dog food commercials. Softest man I ever met. And somewhere along the years, I learned to turn his softness into leverage. I could weaponize a sigh, make him apologize for things he never said. By year 25, his tears felt useful. That night, as his sobs rattled the chandelier, I realized I wasn't loving him, I was managing him. They say I went too far, but monsters don't grow in darkness. Sometimes they're watered, with love, with patience, and just enough power. We met in '78, right outside the Sears appliance section. He was holding a brochure on toasters. I was returning a blender I'd never used. He made some dumb joke about burnt waffles, and I laughed harder than I should have. Something about him, his gentleness, cut through all the noise of that decade. While other boys flexed, he listened. When others raised their voices, he waited. He was safe. We married 2 years later. By '89, we had 2 kids, 1 mortgage, and a photo in every room of the house. He was the kind of husband who ironed his shirts and mine, packed the lunches, remembered every anniversary, even when I forgot. And for the longest time, I loved him fiercely. But love wears edges into people. And somewhere around year 25, I started noticing things, like how I could raise my voice, and he'd immediately apologize, even if I was wrong. How he'd fold when I pouted, how he started asking me how I felt about things before he even considered how he felt. At first, I called it kindness. Later, I called it compromise. But if I'm honest, I started calling it power. And once I recognized that power, I didn't use it gently. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about long marriages. Eventually, one person gives a little more, and the other starts to take. I didn't plan to be the taker, but the line between love and leverage, it's thinner than you think. And the first time I crossed it, it was a Tuesday. He brought home flowers, just because, and I used them to win an argument I didn't even believe in. But that wasn't the moment everything changed. That came later, when I learned how to make him cry on command. He used to leave me notes on the bathroom mirror, little things. You looked beautiful in blue yesterday, or thanks for laughing at my dumb joke. I kept them in a shoebox under the bed. Still do. Back then, I thought he was the most emotionally intelligent man I'd ever known. He cried during weddings. He cried during Up. He even teared up once when I made him meatloaf the way his mother used to. It felt rare, like I'd found something soft in a world that rewarded hard edges. But over time, softness can start to feel like fragility. It was subtle at first. We'd be out shopping, and if I made a comment, some offhand joke about his shirt or his posture, he'd go quiet for hours. Once I joked that he was becoming his father. He didn't speak to me until the next morning. I told myself he was sensitive, and sensitivity was noble, right? But when the same man who used to hold my hand in public started flinching at my tone, when a forgotten anniversary made him weep in the garage, when a sigh from me could ruin his whole weekend, I stopped feeling flattered. I started feeling powerful, and power changes everything. Because once you realize you can tilt someone's emotional world with a single look, you start wondering if you should. It crept into me. Quietly, I'd sigh just to test him, raise an eyebrow just to see him second-guess his words, say it's fine, and count the seconds before he asked if it really was. And each time, he gave in faster, apologized sooner, folded smaller. I should have been scared, but I wasn't, not yet, because the truth is, when someone hands you that kind of emotional leash, you don't drop it. You tug, just a little, and that's exactly what I did. But I didn't realize I'd gone too far, until I found myself planning his reactions like grocery lists. It started with a text. He'd forgotten to pick up the dry cleaning. Something simple, something small, the kind of thing I would have shrugged off 10 years ago. But that day, I sent a message that read, "It's fine, don't worry about it. No period, no emoji, just cold, clipped words." 5 minutes later, he called. His voice was shaking. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'll leave work now. I didn't mean to forget." I told him not to. I told him it wasn't a big deal. But inside, I smiled, because for the first time I realized I could move him, not with kindness, not with reason, but with silence. And that kind of control, it was electric. From then on, I learned which words would crumple him, which tones would deflate him. If I wanted a weekend trip, I didn't ask. I sighed. If I wanted him quiet, I whispered, "I'm just tired." And he would bend. Every time. It wasn't rage. It wasn't yelling. It was something softer, something more dangerous, because no one saw it coming, not even me. It crept into our rituals, our coffee chats, our dinner prep, our bedtime prayers, until even his apologies started sounding like confessions. I didn't have to demand love anymore. I just had to suggest pain, and he'd rush to fix it, whether it was real or not. I told myself I was just keeping the peace, that I was making the marriage work. But the truth, I wasn't solving anything. I was teaching him to live in fear of my disappointment, and one day, he tried to fight back. It didn't feel like a plan at first. It felt like instinct. If I wanted attention, I didn't ask. I went quiet. If I wanted him to cancel golf with his brother, I'd leave dinner untouched. If I wanted an apology, I just looked sad. He filled in the blanks every time, and I let him. Over time, I started curating moments, little gestures designed to pull specific strings. I'd leave out an old photo of us, me in that red sweater he loved, right before bringing up how we'd grown distant, or send a "miss you" text after I'd pushed him away all weekend. He'd come running back like it was his fault. I told myself it was just communication, that I was giving him emotional cues. But really, I was scripting his reactions like lines in a play. I became the director. And he was the audience, always watching, always ready to react. One night I cried, on cue. Tears timed perfectly between the salad and the main course. He reached for my hand. His voice cracked, and all I could think was, he doesn't know I practiced this in the mirror. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just responding anymore. I was orchestrating. And that's when the first crack appeared. He didn't say anything that night, but his eyes didn't follow my cues. It happened just after midnight. I'd gone to bed early. Strategically, of course. Lights off, no goodnight kiss. I wanted him to feel the distance, and he did. I heard him pacing downstairs for an hour, maybe more, drawers opening. A cabinet door slammed, the kettle whistled and kept whistling, until it didn't. Then the door creaked open. He stood at the edge of the room, silhouetted by hallway light. His voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "Do you enjoy this?" I blinked. "This thing you do, where I'm always wrong and you're always disappointed." I said nothing. That silence used to be my sharpest weapon, but this time, it didn't land. "I used to feel safe with you," he continued. "Now I feel like I'm performing and failing." Something tightened in my chest, but not enough to stop me. I turned away, curled into the pillow, and I whispered the same phrase I'd used 100 times before. "You're overthinking again." Only, he didn't fold. He stood there for a long while. Then he walked out, slowly, without a word, and for the first time in a very long time. I couldn't tell if I'd won or lost. He didn't sleep in our bed that night. He didn't make coffee the next morning. And when he left for work, he didn't kiss my forehead like he always had, just the sound of keys and a door that closed a little too quietly. And that silence, the one I used to control, it suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. It was a Tuesday. I remember because he always picked up my prescription on Tuesdays. He'd done it every week since the diagnosis, without fail, without asking. That week, I didn't remind him. I wanted to see if he'd forget. I needed to know if his love was automatic or real. He came home empty-handed. No paper bag, no receipt, just a tired smile and a kiss on the cheek like nothing was wrong. So I waited, calm, silent, predictable. The next morning, I opened the cabinet and stared at the empty bottle like it had betrayed me. Then I let the silence hang. He noticed. Of course he did. Did I forget something? He asked. I turned slowly. No, you've already forgotten. His face changed, like I'd reached inside him and pulled something loose. It was one mistake, Shimante, he whispered. One time. And I said nothing because I didn't want to win. I wanted him to feel like he'd already lost. Later that night, I found him sitting in the garage, holding that little blue bottle. It was unopened. He had driven back after dinner just to get it. Didn't tell me, didn't ask for credit, but the damage had already been done. That's the part no one warns you about. When you weaponize trust long enough, even love starts looking like failure. And from that moment on, he stopped telling me when he was hurt and started proving it in silence. It was supposed to be just a dinner, family, friends, nothing fancy, pot roast, peach cobbler, safe, simple things. We were celebrating our grandson's high school graduation. I wore the navy dress he once said made me look elegant. He hadn't said anything like that in years. We hadn't spoken much at all, actually, not since the night in the garage, but we played nice in front of others. Boomer marriages have muscle memory. He carved the roast like nothing was wrong. I passed the bread like I hadn't been holding resentment under my tongue for weeks. And then my sister asked a question. What's the secret? 32 years and still going strong? I opened my mouth to speak, but he beat me to it. Emotional hostage-taking, he said, barely above a whisper. The room froze. I laughed, automatically, nervously. He's joking, I said, reaching for his hand, but he pulled away. No, I'm not. He didn't yell. He didn't break a glass or storm out. He just sat there, looking at me like he was trying to remember who I used to be. The table stayed quiet. The only sound was the flicker of the candle between us, and the thud of my heart trying to escape my chest. I tried to say something, to take back control, to crack a joke, to explain it all away. But for once, I didn't have the words. He stood up, walked out the back door, and didn't come back for the rest of the night. Everyone else pretended to keep eating, but nobody tasted a thing. That night, I realized something horrifying. He didn't need to yell to leave a scar. All he had to do was tell the truth out loud. I didn't cry that night. I cleared plates, wiped crumbs, smiled through awkward hugs, and half-meant goodbyes. I told everyone he wasn't feeling well. But the truth? He was finally feeling something I couldn't control, and that terrified me more than I let on. The next morning, I reached for the usual script, a text, a sigh, a perfectly timed apology meant to nudge him back into orbit, but I stopped mid-sentence because for the first time in years, I didn't want to win. I didn't want his forgiveness because I earned it through guilt. I wanted it because I deserved it. I walked into the living room. He was on the couch, still in his dress shirt, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't manipulate. I just sat beside him and said, I'm done turning your feelings into tools. He didn't say anything, but he didn't move away either. We sat like that for a while, still, quiet, and in that silence, I felt something loosen, not between us, but inside me. I thought letting go of control would feel like weakness, but it felt more like breathing for the first time in years. I used to think loving someone meant proving it, through sacrifice, through silence, through staying one step ahead of their emotions. But maybe that wasn't love. Maybe that was fear in disguise. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of losing the one thing I could still control. It's strange how a good marriage can quietly slip into performance. You forget when it stopped being partnership and became choreography. I choreographed every word, every sigh, every silence, until he stopped dancing. And now, looking back, I don't blame him, because what I called loving too much was really just not trusting that I was already enough, that he would stay even if I stopped pulling strings, that I didn't need to perform pain to feel seen. I don't know what happens next. We still live in the same house. We still pass each other the salt, but something's different, not broken, just honest. And maybe that's where healing actually begins, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments when we finally put the script down. Because sometimes the hardest part of love is learning how to stop managing it. We haven't talked about that night since. Not the dinner, not the silence, not the look in his eyes when he said it out loud. Some days, things feel softer. Other days, we drift like ghosts in the same hallway, familiar but no longer synchronized. I still catch myself wanting to say things just the right way, to tilt a phrase, to hold a pause, but then I breathe, and I let it land however it lands. I don't know if we'll ever be what we were, or if we should be, but I do know this. There's a fine line between loving deeply and needing control. And if you're not careful, even the best intentions can blur that line until no one feels safe anymore. So let me ask you, if you were me and the person you loved finally saw through you, what would you have done? Let them answer in the comments. Let the conversation begin. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts below. What does love mean when control fades? I'm listening, because sometimes the truth begins with your voice.